Hi, this is Stevie. I wanted to share a sketch that I'm working on in my little 5x5 sketchbook. This is from some photos that I had taken earlier this year in Tucson. And since the sketchbook is 5x5 and it's a 2-page spread, the finished sketch is 10 by 5 inches. And I had some different photos and I played around with some different layouts for it on my piece of paper. And I wanted to put the title right in the center, or close to the center of the painting. So I played around with it first on my little scratch paper, and this is what I ended up with. And so I penciled it in and then added the ink, and I used my Micron 05 pen for the ink, which is permanent ink. And I already had started to color it in, but I'm going to finish that today. So the little tree that I'm working on now is a typical little tree that you see out in the desert. There's lots of them, either bushes or trees, and some of them look kind of broken down, and they're often standing next to something else like a saguaro cactus. So just another feature of the desert that I wanted to include. And notice that I had put it in between the saguaro and then some little barrel cactus that I had seen at the Tucson Botanical Garden. So I thought that made a nice little sketch. And also, while I'm working on that tree, I'll mention the scorpion and the snake and the lizard as well. I did not take those photos. Those are reference photos that I used for that. All three of them are plentiful in the desert, even around my house where I live, but I didn't have photos of them. Now I'm going back over what I had painted earlier to darken it up just a little bit where it needed some indication of shadows. And on the barrel cactus, and then I'll do some work on the saguaro as well. I'm just getting some darker green in there at the bottom and on the left side, which are the areas in shadow, just to create a little more dimension to those objects. And for the green, I used quite a bit of the green gold in this sketch, which is the lighter green, and I found that I can mix a nice darker green just by adding my ultramarine blue to the green gold. So that's what I'm using here to get the darker shade of green. And again, now I'm working on the saguaro, getting it on the shadow side of the saguaro, and I'm being very careful to keep the light areas on the light side of it so that I don't just cover all that up. It helps to add a lot of interest to it. And also it's darker under where the arms connect to the saguaro. And then I also like to add a little bit of my transparent orange to the cactus. I think that gives a nice touch. And just darkening up those grasses a little bit that appear under the cactus. And my lettering, of course my lettering is in there already, I inked it in, but I'm going to do the lettering last. I want to work around it, and I'll have to be careful with that, but I want to get the lizard colored in, and that is a collared lizard, and there are all kinds of collared lizards throughout the U.S., and we have quite a few of them here in the desert. I have lots of them around my front yard, especially in the summertime, and they're pretty big, and they're really interesting little creatures, and very colorful. They come in different shades of blue. There's one that's a bright blue, and then the ones I've seen are more of like a turquoise color. And then I've also seen them in more of desert colors too, tans and browns. So I'm going to make this little guy a little more colorful, and I'll be using some of the colors that I've already used in this sketch. I try to only use not so much a limited number of colors in a sketch, but make sure that I repeat those colors throughout the sketch. And you'll notice that I've got a little bit of turquoise color surrounding the scorpion, and now I'm going to repeat that with the lizard, and then my little touches of transparent orange here and there on the cactus and on the scorpion. I think I might have put some on the snake too. Anyway, I'll be repeating that on the lizard as well. And this is actually how they look. The lizards that are turquoise aren't turquoise on the whole body, but they have either stripes or spots, and it's turquoise combined with some orange color. And so I'm starting on the head, which is not that colorful. I'm just using more of a gray color here on the head. And then as you get more into his body, it's more colorful. And the reason they call them collared lizards is all of them have a black collar on them. So I'll be putting that in last. First I'm going to lay in the other colors and then add the black at the end, since that's the darkest color. So I just started to get a little bit of the orange at the back of his head there. And I added some red, although it didn't show up that much. It's really, I think, a darker orange that's around, right around that collar that he has. Now I'm picking up my transparent orange. Transparent orange is a color by Schminke, and I really like it as compared to something like cadmium orange. Cadmium orange is very opaque, and when you use opaque colors, they can tend to get muddy if you mix them with something. So I like the transparent colors when I can use them. So now what I'm doing is adding a little bit of the turquoise color, which is not really turquoise. It's called horizon blue, and that color is made by Holbein. And that is an opaque color, so I'm trying to be careful, even though this paint is wet, to not mix up that blue with the orange color, because I'll be getting green if I do that. I will purposely mix them later on, but right now I wanted to keep them separate because I just want to make it look like he has a stripe, an orange stripe, and that stripe will be different from the black collar that I'll put on at the end. And then as you go down his body, the orange color turns into a little bit different color. I'm sorry, not the orange, the blue. But I'm just getting him filled in with this turquoise color, and then I'll be adding other colors to it. Some of his body almost looks green because the orange will be on top of it in places, and that's how they look in real life. So here I'm taking some of that orange, making some more stripes, and then I'll eventually just put it right over the blue on the rest of his body. Here I start to fill it in more, and notice how the color starts to turn some kind of a greenish color, which is how they look. And then they have spots too, but I'll have to let this all dry before I put on the spots. His legs stay pretty blue. Getting this other, I forgot to do his legs in the front, so I'm getting those in. And that little bit in between his leg there that was showing, I have to fill that in. And note how I was very careful to work around the lettering on his tail. I just stopped and started his tail to leave room to put in the lettering because I'm going to color in that lettering as well. And when I do color in the lettering, it will be with colors that I'm already using in the sketch. Again, just to keep it all cohesive looking. Now I'm mixing up some of my ultramarine blue and my quinacridone burnt orange, which is like burnt sienna, and I'm mixing up a black color for his eye. Just filling that in. There's kind of a white ring around his eye, so I'm just going to leave that. Just leave it white the way it is. I was just checking to make sure that his body is dry before I go back and do anything else to it, like adding the spots. what I'm doing now is I'm using my number one, that's a Princeton Velvet Touch brush, which is a synthetic brush. What I'm doing now is working on the lettering with that little number one brush. It's not, the bristles are not quite as long as a liner brush, which is why I like it for the lettering, more control. And I don't know if you can see it, but I'm filling in the letters with the horizon blue, but I'm not covering the entire letter. For each stroke, like say downstroke in the letter, I like to make the color half and half. So I did the top part of the letter in blue, and then I do the bottom part of the letter in the transparent orange. And I work on a few of the letters at a time doing that. And the one caution is if you get too much water, I like to pre-wet each letter, but if you get too much water in there, your color's going to all mix together when you put the two colors on. So my advice, if you're just starting out doing lettering, would be keep it a little more dry when you're filling in those letters if you want to do the two-tone. Otherwise, they'll just blend together and you won't see the two different colors. And I'll give you a good shot of this right at the end of this video where you can see the finished product a little more close up, how this is done. And this lettering style is nothing special. I do calligraphy. I've done calligraphy for 40 years. And so I know a lot of different styles, but I really like a whimsical style like this that's kind of made up. Notice that some of my letters are lowercase and some are capitals, and I like that look. For example, the letter A, I just like a lowercase a better than an uppercase, so I really like the lowercase a. I don't care for capital E, so I use lowercase e, even if it's at the beginning of a word. And you can play around a lot with that, and it's not formal calligraphy, but it looks really nice, and I think it fits well with the sketch process. And one thing I would mention, if you're wanting to learn more about lettering, one really good resource on the internet is a lady named Lindsay Waltman Ostrom. That's Lindsay Waltman, Waltman, and then Ostrom, Ostrom. And Lindsay has been doing this kind of lettering for 40 years, and she has really perfected it. And she has many, many lettering styles that she uses that are fun and just whimsical. And so I encourage you to look her up. She does have a YouTube channel, and she has a website called thecreatorofcuteness.com. And she's also on Facebook, and she does a daily Facebook class at 8 a.m. California time every morning. And it's all free. You know, she does it all for free. She does have books that she sells, and I highly recommend her books. They're really good reference tools. But if you watch Lindsay, you will learn a lot from her about this kind of lettering. And it's just so much fun to do, and I think it adds so much to a sketch. And one thing I would also mention if you're new to lettering is the typical rule in calligraphy as far as thick and thin strokes is thin strokes are on your upstroke and thick strokes are your downstroke. And that's just a very basic rule when you're doing like formal calligraphy, but it works well here too. And it's not, I don't follow it exactly, but the thick, don't make everything thick unless you're doing that kind of a lettering style, but I really like the thick and the thin together. There I'm going back in finishing. I realized I hadn't finished painting that rock, so I'm kind of working around the letters to finish that rock. And I think that's it, except for the finishing touches on the lizard. I'm going back, adding a little more color. I still have to get his collar on him, the black collar, since he's a collared lizard. And see how that color, where I put the orange over the blue, that's kind of turned to almost an army green color, but that's how they look. So I had mixed up a black color for his eye, using the ultramarine and the Quinburn orange. So I mixed up more of that color to make his black collar. I don't have black on my palette, so I always mix a black. There you go. There's his collar. I'm just working on finishing touches here. And I'm recording this after I did the drawing, but I think at some point I must have gone back and dried this sketch off before I went back and did the spots on him. And what I'm using to do the spots on him is the Dr. P.H. Martin's pen white. I think that's considered an ink. And they say it's for technical pens, but I sure wouldn't want to put it in a pen because it's so thick. I would use a dip pen instead, or some kind of a pen with a nib. But I'm just going to use, actually what I'm going to use for this is to put the little dots on him as the back end of a brush. And a lot of you might know that trick, but if you want to put dots on something, especially where you have thick paint like this is a lot thicker than the normal watercolor. You can use the back end of the brush. And I'm sorry this is out of the frame here where you can't see it. There we go. So I'm just putting it on the back end of the brush and dotting as I go. And those dots will darken up a little bit. I think the dots on him are actually gray. I had tried a gray color, but it just was too dark. I'm using that there for the rings on his tail, but it just almost disappears. So I think I went back and did those rings with the pen white as well. I think he looks cute with all those dots on his back. And I had done some gray, I used that gray color also to do some of the dots on his leg. So there you have it, my finished sketch of life in the Sonoran Desert. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and think about subscribing, and thanks for watching.